Happy to have with me the founder of India's foremost traveling group of France called Bharat Army, Mr. Rakesh Patel. Rakesh bhai, welcome to this chat. How are you keeping? Kim Cho?
Game Chotame, very well, thank you. Like everybody else, hoping that this period of lockdown ends very, very soon so we can get back to watching and supporting cricket.
So, Rakesh bhai, tell me, when did you start Bharat Army? Whose idea was it? Where did it start? Because as those sort of questions keep coming back to everybody's mind. And why did you start this?
Yeah, so the Bharat Army started in 1999 during the Cricket World Cup in England. So last year we celebrated our 20-year anniversary actually.
Mm.
And it actually started during the India versus Pakistan World Cup match in Manchester. And if you remember that match was in the stadium, probably around 70 to 75% of the fans in that stadium were Pakistani fans. So when me and three of my friends entered the stadium, we were surrounded by Pakistani fans everywhere. And at that point, we decided that perhaps what we should try and do is gather all the Indian fans together, stick together and support the team together. And the experience that we created, the atmosphere that we created was just amazing. Obviously, India won that match. And that was really the impetus that after that match, I felt to myself, you know what? Indian fans being the most passionate Indian cricket fans around the world, we should have our own supporters group. And as I was brought up in England, I saw what the Barmy Army were doing. And I thought, you know what, we should have our own version of the Barmy Army. And hence, that's where the Bharat Army started from. So it's now 21 years. Obviously the World Cup is a year gone now. Unbelievably, it's gone so quickly. But we're 21 years now and still going strong and growing globally.
And what kind of rivalries do you have with other groups of fans? Like Barmy Army is the most prominent of them, but what kind of rivalries do you have with other groups of fans?
Yeah, listen, look, I think because of the likes of the Barmy Army and obviously the Bharat Army over the last 20 years, so many other countries have started their own fan groups, or their fans, I should say, have started their fan groups. So most recently, Bangladesh have really done really well with their cricket doing so well as well. They have a Bangladesh Cricket Supporters Association. We have really good rivalry with them. It's good fun, good banter. Also in Australia more recently, we have the Richies, we have the Fanatics. In New Zealand, we have the Beige Brigade. And it's all good fun, all good banter. All of us share the same common interest in cricket for our own country, same sort of passion for our own country. And I think it just makes a better spectacle in the stands, when you have two rival fan groups from different parts of the world, creating that kind of atmosphere, which just enhances the fan experience in the stadiums as well.
And is there a particular rivalry of your own that you enjoy, say with the Barmy Army, because you also happen to be from England? Yeah. Is there a particular rivalry that Bharat Army also enjoys?
Yeah, listen, I think because we originated from England, I think that the Bharat Army, Barmy Army rivalry is really strong. Mainly because we have a similar type of culture. We sing lots of songs in the stands. More recently, the last time India came to England in 2018 for the Test series, it was a tremendous atmosphere in the stadiums, right? Because we had big sections of the Bharat Army, big sections of the Barmy Army, and they were both going at each other, which just created a fantastic atmosphere. So that rivalry is really strong, and we're looking forward to the Barmy Army hopefully coming to India in February, where there'll be big numbers of the Bharat Army attending all of those Test matches, and we're working very closely with the the Barmy Army on that series, so we can have that sort of level of rivalry that we have in England, also in India, basically.
And how has your Bharat Army grown over the years? You started off as 4 friends, but what is the strength now? What is the level of operation, and where are all you based right now?
Yeah, so it wasn't until I would probably say the 2015 World Cup in Australia, when the demand for Indian cricket fans to travel around the world just got greater and greater. Up until that point, we were not really a commercial organization. We were purely a fan group. But then the demand for Indian cricket fans to travel and be part of the Bharat Army experience got greater and greater. Even in 2015, we were managing tickets, flights, hotels ourselves, and we did that for over 400 people. Now, as you can imagine, when you're not a bonded travel company, you cannot manage that level of numbers. So I managed to work with a travel company, and we brought them on board to say, look, can you look after our travel, because the numbers that we have now are huge. And then I spoke to the ICC and spoke to them about becoming an official ICC travel and tours partner, so we could offer official packages as well. And now we work really, really closely with the ICC, as you've seen throughout the last few tournaments. And also we work very closely with all the cricketing boards around the world to make sure that we can get tickets together in an official capacity, to make sure we can offer, bonded travel packages, but more importantly, that we can continue to offer the experience that we offer Indian cricket fans in the way that the Bharat Army does, So now we're global, we have a company now, officially registered company. We have offices in India, in Ahmedabad. We have offices in the UK, in Australia, all the major metros where there's big populations of Indian fans, basically. And, we're looking forward to the T20 World Cup. Hopefully that still happens at some point in the near future in Australia, because we had big numbers committed for that.
So in terms of, yeah. So in terms of numbers, where would you put the numbers in terms of the Bharat Army fans? About the Indians traveling now, how has it increased exponentially over the years, in your view, from the time you started in '99 to now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Years ago, I remember the first overseas tour that we did was in 2002. We went to the West Indies, and we went to watch matches in Jamaica and Barbados in a one-day series that India won. And in those days, I could quite easily book a hotel room where the players were staying. These days, if you travel anywhere where India is playing, you'll struggle to get even close to the hotel or even get inside the hotel. The demand is huge. I think it's in correlation with the Indian economy. If you look at the middle class now, 20 years, the middle class in India were not spending money on sports tourism. Now you have a middle class that's spending huge amounts of money on sports tourism. And I think it's collaborated with the fact that, the Indian cricket team is doing really well as well. So there's more of an appetite for Indian fans to travel abroad as well. And also they want an experience. That culture wasn't there. That fan culture 20 years ago just wasn't there. You had fan hysteria, right? But you didn't have that fan culture, that proper supporters club culture, which you see really developing in India, whether it's in cricket or even in football. You see that as well now, So I think there's a lot of factors that have contributed to the fact that there's an increased appetite for Indian fans to travel abroad, and to do it under an official supporters group, under a banner like the Bharat Army, just makes people feel part of a family, makes people feel part of something, I think that's what we're trying to achieve as an objective, right? To get people feeling part of something, feeling an experience which they've not had before. And I think that's where the main objective is. That's where we've seen a real change, to give you an idea, we had over 11,000 fans from 33 countries travel to England for the Cricket World Cup last year. Huge numbers, absolutely huge numbers. And those were overseas fans. That doesn't include the fans that were based in the UK. That's just overseas fans, right? So that gives you a bit of an idea of how many people, traveled through us for the last World Cup.
And they are all mostly Indian fans, Indian cricket fans.
All Indian cricket fans, only Indian cricket fans. Yeah, and from countries where you wouldn't even believe that we had Indian cricket fans, and countries where I didn't even know Indians lived, if I'm honest with you, like countries like Cambodia, Mexico, all over Europe. I didn't even know we had Indian people living in those countries, let alone cricket fans, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it was a real surprise, the reach that Bharat Army had in terms of, people wanting to travel through us and being part of our experience. And the feedback we got was phenomenal, right? And we just want to create more and more of those type of experiences. And in particular, we're trying to encourage more people to also attend Test match cricket, something which we're quite keen to do. It's something which is obviously very important, a priority, of Virat Kohli and the BCCI, to get more Indians watching Test cricket. And it's my, foremost format of cricket as well. It's the one that I'm most passionate about as well. So it's something that I'm very committed to try and change as well in India and outside India.
So can you give us an indication of how the whole process works? How many people do you have working for you globally now? And how does it work from the time a series is announced to getting the fans? What is the whole process like, if in a summary, if you can tell us, so that everybody watching can get an idea of how they can be part of the experience?
Sure. First of all, in terms of how many people we have in your first question, we have 18 people working for us in our Ahmedabad office. We have 2 people in Mumbai. We have 6 of us in the UK. And we have 3 people in Australia. Some of them are working on a series by series basis, and some of them working full-time as employees of the Bharat Army. In terms of how it works, well, if you're a registered member, and registration for Bharat Army is free of charge, you just got to go onto our website, bharatarmy.com. you will get updates on every single either bilateral series or ICC tournament, right? If it's an ICC tournament, you will get priority through the ICC cricket family priority, and that's where you get an added bonus of being a Bharat Army member. You get an increased chance of getting tickets for ICC tournaments, and you'll get all the updates through your membership. And if it's a bilateral series, what we do is work very, very closely with all the cricketing boards around the world and make sure that we have dedicated bays, dedicated tickets, and access to all the things that we need for a bilateral series, whether it's in India or also outside of India. So just last week, I've been talking to Cricket Australia since the fixtures have been released for the Australia series, and already we're discussing that in the event that fans will be allowed in the stadiums, how do we make sure we get a Bharat Army allocation of those tickets?
Interesting. We've seen in the past that fans from Australia have come to India, and we've had Merv Hughes or Steve Waugh or Mark Waugh or even Alan Border being part of that group, and they would get guys to come and speak in the morning on the day of the test match and stuff like that.
Sure.
Is that something that Bharat Army also is doing or is planning to do?
Yeah, I mean, for ICC tournaments, it's something that we've done in the past. Namely during the Cricket World Cup, we had different experiences for different types of fans. I think that's the best way to describe it. The thing about Bharat Army is that where originally we started for your kind of hardcore fans that want to be in the stands, during the Cricket World Cup, people from all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kind of ages wanted to be part of the Bharat Army experience. And we had to cater for all different types of fans, right? So whether you're a HNI, whether you're a corporate, or whether you're an everyday fan, we had to create those kind of experiences. So going back to the point you made, yes, after dinner speakers and having those Q&A sessions and one-to-ones, those were probably more for the older generation who really appreciated that type of engagement, that type of experience, and for the fanatical cricket fans who wanted that one-to-one interaction. But then we also had pre-match parties and post-match parties for the younger generation who wanted to get into the real spirit of cricket and mingle with cricket fans from all over the different world who traveled to England for the World Cup. So different experiences, basically. Yeah. So yes, we do that, but we try and make sure that we cater for all different types of fans where we can.
And how many series and tournaments you would have done in the last many years that you've been running Bharat Army? If you could give us a number, that would be great.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, it's difficult to say in the early years because in the early years, we weren't doing as many, I'll be honest with you, but we did some iconic ones. I mean, one that you might remember is when India went to Pakistan for the Samsung series. 4 of us went there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we went for the last 2 matches in Lahore, where, in Pakistani fans carried us out of the stadium wearing our shirts that we were wearing, and I think there's a lot of bad commentary and bad press around the rivalry of India-Pakistan. But, we had Pakistani fans inviting us to their homes, asking us, look, come and eat at our house. You're in our country, we want to look after you, etc., etc. Right? So that was quite an iconic series. Whether it's, we've done all the World Cups, all the major ICC tournaments. We've done all of those. And we've done some of the big bilateral series as well, whether it's England coming to India or India coming to England or Australia. 2018, 2019 was quite iconic for us because all these years we've been going to Australia and losing. We managed to actually see us win a series in Australia. So that was a very iconic one as well. We went to South Africa in the same year, and we went to England. And one of the reasons why, the BCCI and the India cricket players, decided to party with us after we won that series was to basically thank us that, we went to South Africa with them, we went to England with them, lost both series. We still turned up in huge numbers in Australia to support them all the way through to winning that series as well. So it was a little bit of a thank you to recognise our support for them throughout that year, basically.
And when you've come to India with a group of fans, what's been the response like in India? Because we've only had the Bami Army in the past coming as a group, but what's been the response to the Bharat Army coming to India?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? I think for the majority of Indian cricket fans, it's a bit of a novelty, and they're trying to understand what is this all about. A bunch of British Indians, Australian Indians, in India singing these songs, and a lot of them actually really appreciate and want to be part of it, right? So I think from that perspective, it's a bit of a novelty. It's a little bit different. I guess the people who know about us, who have seen us, they're very much aware of it, and they want to find out how they can be part of it more often, But it's been a very, very good response. It's like I said to you, I think that culture or that fan culture is really developing in India across sports, and no more so than cricket. You're seeing now, even within the IPL, all the franchises having their own fan clubs, and having their own organized supporters groups, which is brilliant, I think, for cricket. So I think from the response perspective, I think it's getting better and better. And obviously, we've got 2 big World Cups coming up in India. So I think it's really for us to get in touch as many different fans as possible in India to try and get part of our experience and be part of our family, basically. Yeah.
It nicely leads into my next question about the fact that, you could have a situation where cricket moves to being a franchise sport mainly and not a nation versus nation contest anymore. How do you see that impacting the fan club culture like the Bharat Army or the Bami Army?
Look, I think I had a conversation with the head of the 100 in England recently, and he was asking me a question around how do we get more Asians watching 100, and my view is that, without fans, you don't really have cricket. Fans are so important to cricket. And I think, one of the things we have to think about, and I guess where the IPL did a very good job, is to create an experience which encourages more of a diverse fan coming to the stadium. And then when you can get that diverse crowd coming into the stadium, is to think about the experience that you can create, And I'm a big believer, right, that if you go to a franchise-based model, if you can create that fan culture where you have rival fans, having some banter in the stands next to each other, you create an experience which is very different and very unique, particularly that India hasn't seen before, So I think you can create what I call organized noise in a stadium. Yeah. At the moment, when you watch cricket in India, it's just noise, right? It's a tremendous amount of noise, tremendous amount of excitement, but it's not very organized, right? And I think what we can bring in by having these official supporters groups and having this kind of fan culture is organized noise, right? And what we do is very different, right? In the Bharat Army, we have dole players in the stands, we have trumpet players, we have mascots, we have songs which we teach people through our online channels, and it's very organized what we do, right? And it takes a lot of time and effort, actually, and it takes a lot of coordination, working with the boards, making sure we get the correct security permissions and the correct allocations, correct seating. A lot of work goes into this, right? And I think if we move to that type of model, I think it will encourage this type of culture more in cricket, I think.
How did you arrive on the name Bharat Army?
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by that. How did you arrive on that name? Because you could have gone for Indian Army or anything, but Bharat Army, how did that name come about?
Yeah, again, a good question, right? So the army bit came from the Barmy Army, I'll be really honest. I love the aspect of having an army of fans, so that's where that came from. So you have to give credit to the Barmy Army for initiating that. And now you see lots of different armies, right? The bit around Bharat, right, I wanted to bring an Indian twist to it, if that makes sense. I could have called it Indian, but then the perception might have been, is this the actual Indian army? Is this the forces, right? And actually, the Bharat Army had a different connotation, because people actually ask us that question: are you the Indian Army, or are you something else? And so, there was 2 kind of connotations to it. One is that is inquisitive one, and one is that I wanted to make sure that there was an Indian feeling towards it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And any anecdotes, any stories from the time that you've been on the field with the Indian cricketers, anything that you remember, anything that can be shared, that's also very important. Anything that can be shared that everybody watching this can realize what they can be part of if they come under the Bharat Army?
Yeah, I mean, some of the earlier days, which, the days before we had iPhones and camera phones, right? We weren't able to capture too much of what we actually did, right? But, the most notable, we took 450 people to South Africa for the 2003 World Cup. And when we beat Pakistan in Centurion, I sent a letter to the manager of the Indian cricket team in their hotel, and I said, look, we're going to have a small sort of gathering in a bar in Stanton in Johannesburg. We'd love for you to come and celebrate this win with us. We've cordoned off an area for you in this bar, so you feel comfortable and secure. Didn't think for 1 minute that anyone would turn up, and the whole team turned up. Everyone from Sachin, from Bhaji, Yuvi, Dravid, Gangu, the whole team turned up. And we spent the whole evening with them, partying with them, celebrating that win with them. It was a very, very surreal moment. We've got about 8 photos that somebody managed to take with them, which, you know, we've put a couple of them up in previous years on our social media, but we have to be very careful what we put up, obviously. But for an Indian cricket fan to celebrate a win like that in a World Cup, beating your arch rivals Pakistan with the players that a few hours before won that match, was just a surreal moment. You know, and for the people who were there, you know, when you talk to them, they'll tell you that that was probably the most memorable moment of, you know, for some of them, their lives, not just their cricketing experiences. You know, so being part of the Bharat Army, I wouldn't necessarily say you get access like that everywhere, because that was a long time ago. You know, but you saw, like I said, a couple of years ago in Australia, how we were able to do something very, very similar when we beat Australia, right? So those are the kinds of opportunities that we sometimes get. I would say that happens more outside of India than inside India. Inside India, it's very, very difficult to do stuff like this. But outside India, where there's a little bit more freedom, you know, there's a little bit more access, and the players feel a bit more comfortable, then yeah, this sort of thing can happen.
So you have literally seen Indian cricket change in front of your eyes, from Tendulkar to Kohli.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And and what about you personally? What do you? So is this like a thing that you do full time now? And what was your background like before you started Bharat Army?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a partner in a business myself, but I've worked for this business for over 20 years now, and they know that I have a love for cricket and love for traveling around the world. So they don't hold me back. So I'm very lucky from that perspective. But I'm spending a lot of time now on this, and hopefully in a very, very near future, I can do this full time. That's the plan. But my love for cricket came from my father. So my father is an East African Indian. He played cricket for Kenya internationally. He was captain of the Kenyan international team. Unfortunately, his skills missed a generation, so I wasn't as good as him. But instead of playing the game, I ended up supporting the game. So that's where my love for cricket came from. And, you know, like I said to you, it was the experiences that I got very early on that made me feel that it's just something that, you know, I wanted to do. And, you know, one thing my father maintained for me was that he wanted me to make sure that he knew where my roots were, where my heritage was. So I used to go to India from a young age. So I was always passionate about India as a country, and I see it as my country. And so it's naturally to be able to link, you know, the sport that I love and the country I love together, really drives me to do effectively what I do.
And did you learn cricket, play cricket, and who has been your most favorite cricketer that you followed or passionately kept track of?
Yeah, listen, I definitely played cricket. I played, you know, championship level here in England. But like I said, I wasn't ever good enough to make it to an international level, unfortunately. And it got to a point where I was traveling so much that it's difficult to commit to keep playing, right? So now, you know, my focus is pretty much on supporting the team, you know. And, you know, in terms of growing up, you know, my cricketing hero, my cricketing idol was Rahul Dravid. You know, I just loved everything about him as an individual, in terms of his standards, his behavior, you know, his attitude to the game. You know, even now he's retired, you know, he's not somebody, look, he's not even on social media, you know, he is so focused on the job at hand. And, you know, and at the moment his job at hand is developing, you know, the future of Indian cricket. But his job at hand when he was a cricketer, he was as focused, you know. And for that, I have so much respect, you know, for an individual who can stay focused for such a long time on the field or off the field. Yeah. You have to respect, you know, and, you know, he was a beautiful cricketer. And what I mean by a beautiful cricketer, the way he played the game, right? You know, I don't think anyone defended the ball better than Rahul Dravid, if that makes sense, or left the ball better than Rahul Dravid. Yeah. So for me, he was my idol, my hero. I just loved watching him play cricket.
And now the final question. How do you see everything changing in the post-COVID world? Because there's a lot of talk about cricket happening in front of empty stadium. You've already seen in Germany, South Korea, they've been doing football tournaments without crowds and some dummies being kept and artificial noise being created. Do you see that happening like that for some time to come? And does that in any way alter your plans as a fan army?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say to you is that, you know, we talk about sort of the impact on sport, right? And fans in particular. And what we cannot allow is this pandemic to change, you know, how we watch, support, celebrate the sports that we follow, because there doesn't need to be a drastical change, right? Unless we think these pandemics are going to happen more frequently, right? So first things first, right? There doesn't need to be a huge change in the way we think about sport in that way, right? But what we do need to make sure is that when we're thinking about bringing it back, that we bring it back at the right time, right? So safety first, for the players, for the officials, anyone surrounded with cricket, and obviously for the fans, right? If Virat Kohli is hitting a four, we can't high five our friends sitting next to us at the moment, right? It's just not possible. So we need to create an environment where we can bring cricket back for the fans in a safe environment. So I think we've got to step back into cricket from a fan perspective gradually, in phases. Hopefully, some of the cricketing boards are having conversations and the ICC is having conversations about how that happens. Even if it means that we have 1,000 fans in the stadium, spread around, that's better than having no fans, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think, what I would like to see is the boards of cricket around the world and the ICC thinking about the fans, right? And thinking about how we can enhance the fan experience and the player experience during these times, right? So I hope that's what we get to see. And look, we don't want to make too many changes, right? I mean, we're still waiting for the ICC to make a decision on the T20 World Cup. Whether it happens this year or next year, we will still talk. We will still have big groups going. You may not be aware, but 18,000 Indians have purchased tickets for the T20 World Cup from India, right?
My God. Okay.
That gives you an idea of how many people are expecting to travel to Australia. Yeah. Now, whether all those Indians still travel or not, that's another question, right? But the demand for that tournament is huge, right? Therefore, we have to make it happen, but we have to make it happen in a safe environment. That's the most important thing.
Say in 2023 for the 50 over World Cup, what's your guesstimate of the number of people who could travel to India as part of the Bharat Army group?
Sorry, you froze there. Sorry.
I said in 2023, as per your guesstimate, how many people do you think could travel to India for that 50 over World Cup? Because that's going to be a huge tournament. What's your if you were to have a vision for that particular tournament, what would be your guesstimate?
Yeah. Listen, I think from my perspective, I set out a vision a couple of years ago. It was a 5-year vision. And my vision was that if we had, 110,000 Indian cricket fans in Ahmedabad for the Cricket World Cup final, I wanted 110,000 of those to be somewhere associated with the Bharat Army, right? So that doesn't mean they should have traveled with Bharat Army. They could have purchased a ticket via Bharat, or they could just be a member of Bharat Army, right? But that's the vision that I'm working to, right? So I've got quite a lot of work to do to get to that vision, but why can't we have every single Indian cricket fan being associated to a fan club, right? There's no reason why we can't have that. They just need to understand the value and the benefits of being part of us, right? So that's what I'm working towards. In terms of how many people will travel, well, that's a difficult question to answer, right? Because 11,000 Indians traveled to England from 33 countries, right? But if you think about the expat communities in England, in Australia, in the UAE, all across Asia, actually, in the USA, out of those 11,000, a third of those 11,000 came from the USA, right? Huge population of Indians in the USA who are massively disconnected to India. Forget about cricket. They're just disconnected to India, right? For them to come back to India, it's a long journey for them, right? But if they can come back when there's a cricket World Cup happening, it will be huge, right? So I think the next 2 World Cups in India are going to be massive, right? From a fan perspective, and I think we're very much part of the experience, hopefully, that a lot of these fans will get.
So you've just given everybody breaking news and sort of by saying that the final of the 2023 World Cup is going to happen in Ahmedabad. Not many would have guessed it, but having the world.
I'm guessing. I'm
oh, okay, fine.
I'm guessing.
Yeah. So the fact that the world's biggest stadium and you have an office in Ahmedabad ties in very nicely for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, why would you have a World Cup final in a stadium which has 40,000 when you can get 110,000 in? I mean, It makes logical sense, right? Yeah. And if Mr. Modi has anything to do with it, I'm sure he'll influence that decision in some way.
Thanks a lot, Rakesh bhai, for giving time for this chat. I am making sure that I am registering as part of Bharat Army. I'll make sure that others also, after watching this, will become part of this experience. Thanks a lot for giving your time, and hopefully Bharat Army keeps growing further and further.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and to all of your viewers and listeners. Hope they stay safe. They stay well, and we
Thanks.
see them in the cricket stadiums very soon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.